at it. Okay, hi everybody who's not here, we miss you. We are just getting started on results-based accountability and some kind of complicated concepts for today. So it is a good idea, actually. Thank you for the suggestion to record. So this is specifically from the book of results-based accountability. It talks about the differences between results, indicators, and performance measures. And again, like I said, it took me probably 25 times before I could really I still am not confident that I can get these things separated in my mind. But try to think of results as what is the condition that we are trying to create? So if I asked you that question for your school and your communities, what is the condition that you are trying to create? There might be more than one. Can somebody give me an example of a condition that you're trying to create in your community? So for example, I'll give you one example. Okay, wait, somebody has one in the chat. The word condition is throwing me off. Okay. Okay, so let's think of it like this. What would I see? I guess it's kind of like, it's like a goal, but it's bigger than a goal. It's a goal that you can actually see. So here's an example. Parents support student learning at home. That's a condition that we might be trying to create, right? Or students live in healthy and safe communities. That would be a condition that we would be trying to create in our communities. Okay. Integrating the families into the school community. So that would be one. And we might even get a little more specific on what exactly that would look like, right? Like maybe parents feel like they have an actionable voice in the community. Okay. What are some other things you could think of that are conditions that you'd be trying to create? The community support and families engaged in their child's learning. Good. At our school, we were trying to create a condition where students want to come to school every day. Yes, and on time. Good. School is a safe place for families. Yes, or even the community is a safe place for families. Because you can make it, a school condition, a classroom condition, a student condition, a community condition. Absolutely. Okay, I think you're getting it, right? Are you starting to get what that means? So that's a result. So when you do results-based planning, you think about the results first. It's kind of like a backwards plan, right? You think about, where do I want to go? Not we. Where do we want to end up? What is the condition that we want to see? So when we talk about like the Penguin book, those of you who have been in our book study, what they want to see is they need a safe place to live, right? That's the result. That's the condition that they are trying to create. So then they're planning now, how do we get there? And part of the planning includes who's going to help, right? So that's okay. So is this making sense to you? So the 90-day plan, who here is familiar with that term? 90, or is anybody not familiar with that term? The 90-day plan. Amanda, you might not know what that is. Okay, so the 90-day plan is something that the state of New Mexico asks schools to submit to them every year. And it's basically this. It's kind of identifying what are the results that we want to change and see in our school. So the 90-day plan, it has like 90-day increments. I think that's why they call it the 90-day plan. But it will focus. So it's focused mainly on academics, though, because it comes from PED and it's really focused on like what teachers can do in their classroom. So that's not, I mean, it's helpful for us to know, but it's not exactly relevant to you, only because you don't have a whole lot of influence over what happens inside the classroom necessarily, right? But you do have influence on what happens outside the classroom and getting students into the classroom. So whoever it was, I think it was Jamie, said, we're trying to create a condition where students want to come to school every day. So the 90-day plan might say students, we see an increase in students, participation in the classroom or something like that. So that might be in the 90-day plan. So then you can use that to say, well, how are we going to support getting students to school so that they can participate in the classroom? Does that make sense to you? Sort of? So you'll be supporting the 90-day plan, but my point is they start with the condition that they're trying to change. So let's think about, okay, so we gave examples of conditions that we want to see. And these are positive. That's the other thing I want to say. These are all positive changes, right? So in the 90-day plan, it might say something like, we want to see our 4th grade reading scores increase by 15% or something like that, right? Like it's very specific. So, but it is a positive frame. You wouldn't say, you're not focused on things you're trying to change that are negative, okay? All right, so that's a result. Now, an indicator is how we know that we're getting to the result, okay? So they're like steps. So an indicator measures the achievement of the result. So let's go back to some of the examples that you gave in the chat. So we had school is a safe place for families. That's the result that we want to achieve. How are we going to know that we're getting there? What are some of the things that need to happen? So think about this as like a big goal like this. So what are the little steps that we need to take to get there? What would be the first thing that comes to your mind, Ralph?
That's a really good question. The first thing that comes to mind would be engaged. If I'm going to tie it to my 90-day plan, it's going to be an improvement in attendance and tied to the 90-day plan, increase in attendance, increase in academics. The qualitative portion of it will be students more engaged.
Yeah, okay. So you would start looking at the contributing indicators. Yes. So serving for reasons why students aren't attending. Right, exactly. Although that would be for attendance or for whatever. So we were talking about schools being safe, but yeah, for any result that you were talking about, Jamie, yeah. So you want to know, first of all, why is it not safe, right? Or why are they not coming? Or why can't 4th graders read? Or like whatever, right? You would want to know, and then you would want to even, so the way that they describe this is asking why, like, I think it's 7 times or 6 times. So why is it not safe? Why are they not coming? Well, why is that happening? Well, why? And you like dig down and you dig and dig and dig and dig and dig. You have to get to the indicators that you can actually impact, right? You don't necessarily, like if students aren't coming, if it turns out students aren't coming because they don't have a school bus, or like Lowell, actually, students don't have a safe, like there's a lot of challenges around a safe route to school at Lowell. So we need to find out like why is that a real thing? Why are they not coming? And finding out, right, transportation and kids are walking to school. Good. Okay, so I didn't even see that, Stephanie, but yeah, exactly. So you would want to start digging into the whys and the whys and the whys behind that, okay? And then a performance measure lastly. So indicators are kind of like check boxes where you can say, I know we're getting to the result and this is how I know. And then a performance measure is how well is it working? So the indicator might not be the right indicator if it doesn't lead to the result that we want, right? And the only way we're going to know that is by measuring the performance. So we're going to get more into this. I know already it's confusing, but don't worry, we're going to talk more about it. These are the steps for how to get there. So this is kind of where you are right now, except maybe for Amanda. You are in this step, or you're just past this step. Step 1, which is this little green one right here. You're gathering and identifying and sharing data. So somebody give me some examples of data that you have gathered, identified, and if you've shared it or not, that's okay. If you have, talk about how you did it, and if you haven't, and I don't want to hear the results yet of the data sharing. I just want to hear, what have you gathered? What have you identified? And have you shared it? And how did you share it? Any ideas out there? What kind of data have you gathered? Let's start there.
I could start.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Ralph. So I started giving presentations during advisory time with students, and And as part of my background training, I do like what's called creative facilitation. And so I start the presentations off with a mood check-in, and the themes change each time. Like I've asked them to draw an emoji to represent how they're currently feeling, or to draw an animal to represent how they're currently feeling, and they'll put the emotion next to it. And I started to notice that over 75% of those sticky notes were maybe what would be identified as uncomfortable emotions, like sad or angry, or a couple of them honestly had guns to the head. And so I realized, like, okay, this is a pattern. Our students are not feeling okay at school. So I've been collecting data around these feelings. So even like the one from last week, over 50 of the emoji check-ins were sad faces. And so at this point, it's just gathering that and trying to track that to prove that there is a pattern there.
That's a great example, Jamie. Thanks. Ralph, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, and I brought it up before for my community schools meeting, I tracked attendance based on our 4 tiers. And I derived that data, and we dug deeper. We're at the stage now where we're digging deeper into tier 4 and trying to figure out what the ACEs are that are the adverse childhood experiences that are tied to our tier 4 attendance students.
Excellent. Okay. So you're kind of on a second stage of data gathering based on discussions from the sharing. Okay. And then Stephanie put in the chat survey data, SAPR. The SAPR website, Amanda, is on the APS website. They're an excellent resource for data. And Stephanie shared data. How did you do it, Stephanie? Wait, oh, maybe she stepped away. Okay. And Berta just talked about this morning about surveys that she's done. That's a data gathering. Any other ideas, things that you've gathered or identified that you want to gather?
Me? Yeah. Well, actually, there was an aha moment today in the morning because I tried to put all the data together. And I always thought that the part of the parents that we want more like after the school help. Not really. They are more into having like more awards for kids, attendance and things like that. Same as the teachers, you know, that was one of the first priority for both the teachers and the parents.
Okay, so I don't want to talk yet about what you learned, but I am glad to hear that you're learning things because that is kind of the point, right? That is the purpose. And so I do want to jump off of what Berta said, which is we don't ever assume that we know. And that's a perfect example, right? And that's why we do this. This is a very critical component of a community school. And that all decisions, ideally, in a community school are made in 2 ways. One, data, they're based on data, data-driven. And 2, they have multiple perspectives and voices involved in the decision-making. And so this is a great example of why and how a community school is different. Ralph?
Hey, just want to do a quick interruption for, I guess, Apache and for Van Buren. If you guys are hearing those explosions and gunshots, I guess the Army's actually blowing up, or they're actually blowing up stuff on the base. We just got a call. Anybody can hear that going on. That's the sound.
I mean, a heads up would have been nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Air Force Base, as our kids are freaking out. Okay, that's good. Thank you for telling us. Okay, so we're going to look at an example. So this example is attendance. So here is 4-year, that's supposed to say year, sorry, 4-year high school graduation rate for an imaginary school. And this is obviously not real, but it's broken down and you can see it's actually more than 4 years, it's like 6 years. But you've got 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, and it's broken down by demographic here. Okay, so this is an example of compiling data that you would share and how you would share it. Okay, you absolutely would never share student names or student ID numbers. Okay, but you can certainly share it this way because nobody knows who these students are. And then on the left here, you see a box that has some questions. These are the kinds of questions that you might ask your community school council as you're sharing these data with them. So let's start with the first one. What's interesting to you about this graph?
That from 2016 to 2017, the white demographic of students drops down to 19%.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, isn't it? Anything surprise you besides that, obviously?
I guess if we wanted to take a little bit, it looks like the Hispanic and Latino graduation rate has improved. So I guess if I were to dig into that, I'd see what we're doing to work on the Hispano population.
Yeah, and sorry, it is graduation rate. I think I said attendance. It's graduation rates. Yeah, that is really interesting, isn't it? And we're not putting any judgments, right, on the data right now. We're just talking about what we see. Marcus.
I guess I don't know if I find it useful, because if there are 100 students and only 5 of the other demographics and the rest is what, 85 white students, then I guess it skews how relevant any of those curves or rates are. So,
Yeah.
well, I see that bullet point at the bottom that says, what more would you need to know?
Yes.
And I guess that I skipped that, so I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's good. And that's, I mean, I'm not, as you're facilitating this discussion, people are not necessarily going to answer the questions in the order that you ask, and they're going to bring things up like that. So that's really good. And so you need to be prepared to say, yeah, exactly. I do think that we need to know how many students are represented in each of these demographics, right? No, good point. Thank you. Okay, so just one, we'll move on here, but just a couple of other questions you can ask, right? As you discuss each data point, begin to form hypotheses about why different student groups have higher absenteeism or higher rates of graduation, or, right? Like, we don't necessarily know, but what you're trying to do is bring together a team of perspectives. They might not be experts in this topic, but they have a valid perspective. And so getting this, a parent might look at this differently than a teacher, right? And an after-school provider might look at it differently than both a parent and a teacher, a principal. Like, all those voices have a different perspective. So discussing it with the multiple perspectives is really important. Stephanie.
No, I just wanted to speak on that point, because at my last council meeting, we shared attendance data. And that was exactly it. Like, we had everyone in my council from different walks of life. And one of my parents asked, well, what would the difference in, what's the breakdown in attendance? Like, what is it pre-COVID versus COVID versus now? And I thought that was like a really good question to ask, is what was the difference between the attendance within that realm? And then our out of school provider wanted to know, of course, if we can narrow down the demographics as well, as having, different race and ethnicity involved. And then he also wanted to know, he'd like to see the data after we've, implemented our out of school time, like, how is that going to make a difference in your attendance and as well as your grades? And so they had so many different ideas and questions in the council. So it's always good to share your data with your council, especially because, exactly like what Deanna says, there's different perspective from each type of group.
And it doesn't have to just, so thank you for sharing that, Stephanie. Were you surprised about some of those questions, or were they kind of unexpected?
They were unexpected, yeah. And what was really odd too is, like, I had this whole agenda planned to talk about other items as well. We ended up spending the whole council time talking about attended data because they were just so engaged in it and they wanted to know, more about it. They wanted to know about the different demographics and, how it's changed versus COVID and versus now. And then, like I said, out of school time. And I was really intrigued at the fact that they were like, well, we want to help. Even like my city council member was like, hey, would incentives like, t-shirts help with attendance? If you got perfect attendance and you got a t-shirt saying, hey, I made perfect attendance as a McKinley comment, would that be something that would give children to work towards? Like they just started brainstorming all these ideas and I was not expecting that at all. And I was like, I have to remind myself when I'm running my council, you're the facilitator. They're going to lead you where they're going to lead you. And if they want to spend the whole day talking about data on attendance, let them talk about data on attendance. So
yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that, Stephanie. That's like actually a perfect example, I think, of a couple things. So one is the multiple perspectives matter, and you saw for yourself why. So I always appreciate when like hearing real life examples like that from community school coordinators, because it sort of helps to emphasize that what I'm telling you is not, I'm not just making this up. Like it really matters that you have multiple perspectives. And so try hard to make sure that you have that in your council. And then two, I love the fact that you said, I had this whole agenda planned, but we just spent the time discussing. Yes, exactly. I have also said to you all, maybe not Amanda, but most of you at some point, that the community school council drives your work. And so there is a fine line between, like, you do have to manage people sometimes in the meetings, but being flexible about your agenda so that if they are really into discussing this, then you need to go with that. And they are going to set what happens. And you will facilitate that and move forward with that work based on what they say. And that is how it should be. It should never be you trying to get through your agenda because this is your meeting, right? So I appreciate the flexibility that you demonstrated there also, Stephanie. And then third, the fact that they immediately went to ideas makes me laugh because that always happens and it kind of derails the conversation. And so I do want to give you just right now, all of you, a facilitation tip, because 100% guaranteed this will happen to you when you start to talk about data and people get concerned or they will have ideas, they just do. And the fact is the idea part actually doesn't come yet. So you have to sort of control that. So the best way to do it, that I have found, is in an in-person meeting. I have a flip chart ready that says ideas, and I'm trying to get them back to root cause, because actually what you need to do is talk about the root cause first, which I'm going to go through in a second. But I will say that's a great idea, and I don't want to lose it, so I'm going to write it over here. But then we're going to go and then try to like regroup your because you do have a brainstorming session. It's just not yet, right?
That's funny that you said that, Deanna, because I have a giant poster board and I call it idea parking lot. And so anytime they had an idea, I told them, okay, write that down on the sticky. Let's go put that on the parking lot because we need to revisit that. And so I did exactly what you said.
Perfect. No, that's perfect. So great facilitation tips for you. And Jamie says she has the same thing. So that's really, and I think actually Kim also, she has in her office she has, I think, the 4 pillars actually, and she writes them down under the pillars, which is a cool idea too. You definitely don't want to lose ideas, and people are going to start to come to you more and more with ideas because they see you as the person who can facilitate ideas, and that's a good thing. When they shift their thinking away from you as the person who goes and gets donuts to you as the person who facilitates ideas, that's exactly where we want to go. So, okay, I want to move to the next slide here. So this one is absenteeism. So we're looking at attendance. So this is chronic absenteeism by gender. So just looking at the boys in the school, the girls in the school, the severe absences at the bottom. So this gets to kind of like the tiers you were talking about, Ralph, or whatever, right? Like that's a way to look at it. The point here is just, this is a different way to look at attendance data by breaking it out by gender. You can also break it out by race and ethnicity. And what this does really is it shows you, so African-American students right here in this example, there are only 4. And so we would not use the data from those 4 students because it becomes identifiable then in that case. So another way to look at this would be this way. And then if you start to compare, okay, so we're seeing like a pretty high chronic absenteeism among Native American students at this particular school. And then boys are much higher than girls. So we could maybe infer that Native American boys, right, might be a target area that we want to look at. Like as we talk about starting to make those hypotheses, right? I don't know that we want to, again, try not to put judgment on data. We in community schools use this as a flashlight to shine a light on what is happening in our school. Nobody can argue with numbers. So that's a good thing. So it's not you standing up there saying, well, I think we need to focus, right? It's like, here is what we're looking at and we're going to talk about it together. And you're going to, and they, like I said, they will have ideas. Here's another way to look at it. This is breaking it down by grade level. So this is a high school. So we would look at 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. So again, looking at the severest chronic absence appears to be 9th grade students. So that's interesting. So why would that be, right? So this is, these are all different things. You could have a whole conversation for an hour just about this one slide, right? With your council. I don't encourage that because you do need to actually move them along. But those are just some ways of presenting. So whatever it is that you've gathered, it doesn't have to be attendance, right? It could be survey responses from parents. Here are the trends that I'm seeing. If I break it down by race and ethnicity, here's what it looks like. If I break it down by grade level, here's what it looks like. Here are the responses from students. The YRRS surveys, Marcus, are awesome. You should pull that data. I mean, you won't have it for this survey, but pulling that for the last couple of years, like what did we notice? If you can get it for your school. I don't know if they do it by school. Sure, Berta, bye. But the YRS data is really interesting to look at, the resiliency factors for youth. So, okay. So that was all of step 1. You all should have a pretty good handle on data gathering at this point, right? Except for maybe Amanda. If you have concerns or you're not sure where to get it or what you're supposed to be gathering, please tell me. You can tell me privately. And I will meet with you one-on-one and we'll talk about it, okay? But I feel like we've talked a lot about data gathering in the last couple of weeks, and so you should have a pretty solid idea. That was just to give you some ideas of how to present it to your council. And I'm sure some of the others that have already presented, like Ralph and Stephanie and maybe Jamie, I don't know. If you've already presented data to your council, maybe you can share those examples with our cohort or something, just as to give us ideas. So then the next step is not gather ideas, shockingly, because the problem is with jumping straight to ideas is we don't actually know if our idea is going to work. So what you have to do, and what we're doing in this case, is building those indicators. This is where you start to ask the why to get to the result. So if the result is we want to improve attendance, then we need to get into the why. Like now we know what it looks like from multiple different perspectives and multiple different ways. Now we need to get into the why is it happening. So you analyze the trends. And again, this is not you telling people what they're looking at. That is one way. You could stand up there and say, so let me tell you what we're looking at here. We're looking at blah, 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 right? What's a more effective way to get people to buy in?
Can you just say like what here is popping out to you?
Yes. Yep. Ask them what they're seeing. Ask questions. So those are 2 different ways to facilitate the same conversation, right? One is tell them what they're seeing. The second is ask them what they're seeing. The ask one tends to be more successful, especially if you're trying to engage their thoughts, which is what you're trying to do, right? So perfect, Amanda, way to go. Okay, so you're going to look for the factors that are contributing to the data. It's just like a diagnosis from a doctor before treatment. You wouldn't just, if you came in and you're sick, the doctor's not just going to come up with ideas and give you medicine randomly, right? They're going to actually try to analyze, okay, well, what is causing this? And so that we can treat the cause, because that's the only way we're going to impact and get the result we want, your better health. Does that make sense to you? You have to treat the cause. And you, I guarantee you, do not know what the cause is. You have to dig into and ask people questions to find out what it is. So here are some ways to do that. Again, this is another way of looking at data. This is attendance by week. Is it by week or by day? Oh, this is by day. So these are daily attendance records. So again, we're looking at, wow, we have some serious things going on some of these days. What's the story behind these data? Why is this happening? What are the causes? Just think back to that doctor analogy. What's causing this? And you're going to ask questions of your team about the causes. Now, they will have ideas, and some of them might sound like this. Well, parents just don't care about education, so they don't send their kids to school. That will probably come up. In a community school, not an appropriate comment, but not everybody knows that they're in a community school yet. So what's your job as a coordinator when you hear things like that?
I guess just bring the vision back into perspective and alignment.
Yeah.
Just kind of course correct. Always
Sure.
Being what I said yesterday, the chief reminding officer.
The chief reminding officer. Yeah, I love that. The chief reminding officer. Reframing it. So reframe those. Okay. So there's two tactics to take. One is generally, if you have parents in the meeting, comments like that might not happen. However, it does happen. I've seen it happen. And I was like, oh, there's parents sitting right there at the table next to them. And I don't even think they hear themselves because it's just such a common refrain, right? I'm cringing on behalf of the parents. And I'm also texting the coordinator, like, please, please, please reframe, like, don't let that, don't let that comment. I was in a community school council meeting one time, you guys, from a school, not here, where they wanted to post in the front office a list of students who were tardy and have the parents like put their names beside. I know, I was horrified. And I will tell you though, there was not one parent in that meeting. And I hope that no teacher or educator would say something like that in front of parents, but I don't know. But so your job is to become really sensitive and attuned to the multiple perspectives, because things can also be said about students and about community partners that are maybe not the most positive, or about teachers too. Parents might say the same thing about teachers, like, well, the teacher doesn't like my kid and they punish them. That happens too. So you are in the relationship business. And so trying to reframe any comment that comes up like that into something like, well, maybe they don't understand. Maybe we haven't communicated the importance. Maybe there are some challenges that they are experiencing right now. Let's dig into that. Right? Like just, try to make it a positive frame. And as Amy said, bring it back to what you're trying to do. So, but you are trying to get to the root cause, and you're giving your best thinking. Like this in itself is maybe one whole meeting, okay, about identifying root causes. And it's going to depend on the data that you're looking at too. So here are some ways that we can understand the root causes and we can get to the story behind absenteeism in this particular case. But again, it could be anything. It could be school culture, it could be safety, it could be like Jamie said, if we want to know why students aren't coming, these are some ways we can get there. We can do surveys. Yes, that's an easy one to kind of knock out. Sure. You can do focus groups, which is where you gather a similar group of people together and you talk. And it could be ninth graders, it could be parents of ninth graders, it could be the kindergarten teachers, right? Like just talking to people in small groups is helpful to ask questions and understand the story behind the data. You can do observation. You can just like walk around and look at like, is my school safe? Is there a bus? Is there, like what is going on? Just make some observations. You can do interviews one-on-one with people. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, walking up and down the pickup line with a clipboard and a pen and saying, hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm the community school coordinator here at McKinley. It's okay if I ask you a couple questions. Are you at all, concerned about attendance for your child? Or, how is, like, what's working for you? Why do you think they have a hard time coming to school? And if they don't, awesome. I'm so glad they don't. Thank you so much for your time. And just move down the row of cars. Those all count as qualitative data gathering, and you need to write it down or record or something, because you're going to identify trends, and you can't do that. I mean, unless you're superhuman. I mean, Stephanie clearly has a good memory because she did that whole picnic game. But unless you have like an awesome memory, you might not remember everything you hear. So I would encourage you to write it down. And if they don't want to talk to you, they don't want to talk to you, that's fine. Don't talk, that's okay. Self-assessment is also like the code book, looking at just what are the expectations, or looking at what are the conditions in our school, looking at previous surveys that parents have filled out, like the quality of education survey, or the YRRS survey for middle school. I think high school does that too. And then attendance codes, like actual data, right? Like, what are some of these attendance codes that we're seeing, or withdrawal codes, or like other things like that? Like, what do we see trends? Are we seeing just a lot of tardies and kindergartners at the beginning of the day? Or maybe ninth graders are having a hard time getting out of bed, or whatever, right? School starts early. So just looking at, these are just ideas. Now, you don't have to do them all, but these are just ideas that you can present to your council. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to say. Sorry about this slide. You don't have to do any of these really. You could ideally ask your council for help in creating. You could say, okay, so we clearly have done our best thinking now around this problem. We want to know more. Here are some ways that we can know more. What should we do? I think that we should do some focus groups. Okay, who's going to help me with that? I mean, you're like the little red hen, seriously. Who's going to help me create the focus group? Who's going to help me write the questions? Who's going to help me invite the people? Who's going to help me take notes? And don't do it. If nobody steps up to do it, don't do it. This is not on you to do by yourself. This is a team effort. So that's why all the time that you've been spending, hopefully up until now, building solid relationships with partners is so that they will step up and help you with these things, little red hen. And if they are not, you need to get out there and strengthen those partnerships, okay? Because you need their help. There is no way you can do this by yourself. And I don't expect you to do it by yourself. But it does need to be done. Okay, so I'm not going to say, well, if nobody steps up, just don't do it. I'm saying if nobody steps up, don't do it yet. You need to build some relationships, and so that you can get it going. And that's a great thing to talk to your principal about too. Okay, so no one is helping me with this. What should I do? And have your principal talk to you about some of those things. Or I can talk to you, or other coordinators, you can talk to them. So these are some survey results from students. They did a survey of students, understanding why students are absent. So what I really wanted you to learn or see about this particular slide, and I'm going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes, is this question right here. It doesn't say, why aren't you coming to school? What does it say? Why do you come to school? Yes, there's that positive reframe, right? That is how we want to pose things. What excites them about coming to school? This is, just look at this. What is this, like, I don't know, 15 questions? Look at how much rich information there is just in this one survey. Look at this makes me sad. My school values me as a person is the very last one. Like, if I were the community school coordinator, I would be like, oh my gosh, that is so sad. We need to change that, right? We want our students to feel valued as people in our school. That might be a result that we're going to focus on as a council. What do you all think about that? Right? Like, see what I'm saying? Like, this is such rich information for discussion. I mean, these top one, I want to graduate. That's fabulous that 93% of the students want to graduate. I like seeing my friends, of course, right? I have fun at school. At least one of my teachers cares about me. That's another one that's a little bit low, right? That my classes are interesting. Whoa. Like, I think teachers might be a little shocked also at some of these responses, right? So this is a great way to just kind of talk about, like, wow, again, what are we seeing? Is there anything here that surprises you? Is there anything that we want to address? Is there anything more we need to know? And those kinds of questions in this kind of discussion, I guarantee you would have a very interesting discussion. Van Buren, a few coordinators ago, actually did do a survey like this with students, and it was this exact frame. It was around attendance. They had a huge attendance push a few years ago. And they asked these questions. And then what the coordinator did, which I thought was brilliant, is she divided these up into sections, and she divided her council up into small groups, and they each took a piece. And they dug into the students' responses, the individual responses, and then they discussed like, well, what did we learn? What are we seeing? What are we concerned about? And then they brought it back to the council, and then they came up with a project and a plan to address the things that were concerning them, which is a great idea, right? To do if you have the ability to do that. So here is also quotes, right? So that one was a survey just with responses. And what I don't know, and I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this, is I don't know if these were choices that the students checked or if they were open-ended questions. I'm not sure. If you ask open-ended questions, you need to be able to group them, right, into these responses, because you don't need your council to look at 350 student responses. Like you can't do that. So either ask questions like this where they check off boxes, or group the responses, okay? This one is, these were open-ended questions. So again, what are the different reasons that you have missed school this year? Again, it's not, why are you not at school? Right? It's, what are some of the reasons that are causing you to miss school? And that again immediately takes the blame and the sense of guilt off of the student and onto like, tell us what's happening in your life. That's what this question is, right? Tell us what's happening in your life that is making it hard for you to come to school. And you can do things like this with elementary students. You can do little smiley faces. You can have teachers sit down and ask the questions. You can have in out of school time, genius hour, like there's lots of different, you can put up posters in the hallway and have them put little stickies, little stickers on the ones that they agree with. There's lots, you gotta be creative. But this is again where you get your council to help you come up with ideas, right, on how they'll do it. And they make the posters. The parents and the community members and the teachers and the people in your council help you with all of this, okay? So I think it's also kind of hilarious that the students said we're lazy and it's hard to get up early. Yes. So last thing I'm going to say, let me actually just, so I'm going to stop at this particular slide. The last thing I want to say just about this is that, and I've talked to some of you, and I'm sorry, I am going to have to repeat myself sometimes because we have new people and, so I'm sorry for those of you that have already heard this story, but Highland High School. So Jake Mirabal on our team, he was the community school coordinator for about 1.5 years at Highland High School, just kind of by default because they didn't have a coordinator. And one of the things that Jake did was he surveyed the high school students and he asked lots and lots of questions, and he did get a really good rate of response. Now, some of the responses were, because I am Batman, like every single question, which was, it was actually kind of funny. And he's like, yeah, I know who that was. And he actually did know who the students were. He had them put their student ID number into the survey, which was interesting. But what he learned from that survey, he took to the community school council. And the #1 concern of the students was, we do not have a safe place to go after school. And he talked to the community school council, like, what are you seeing? This is what the students are saying. He also did some extra data gathering around that. He was like, that's interesting. Sure, we're at Highland, which if you know where Highland is, it is a little bit of a dangerous place to be sometimes. So he pulled the crime statistics from the neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhood of Highland for the last 6 weeks. And he presented that also to the council, and especially from the hours of 3 o'clock to 6 p.m. And are we seeing students getting in trouble? Like, as a parent, when my kid was 14 years old, the fact that the school locked it wasn't Highland, but the fact that the school locked the doors at 3 o'clock, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you're just letting 14-year-olds wander around the city at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Like, I'm at work. Where is my kid? So these are concerns, right? The students expressed that they needed a safe place to go. And what the community school council came up with was a building at the school that was not being used, that was just full of trash, and community partners who really, really, really care about the students and really, really, really wanted to help. And so they engaged the community partners to create a space at Highland. And I'm going to beg your patience for 2 minutes. I want to show you this video. And again, some of you have seen this before, so I apologize if you've seen, although it's lovely and it almost makes me cry every time I see it because I love it. Oops, sorry, wait, don't start without me yet, video. But I want to show you this video, and it was made by the community partner, which actually in this particular case was Citizens Church, although they weren't the only partner, but they took the lead on this project. They came up with the project and they took the lead. So I just want you to see it because I want you to I just want you to leave with an example that from start to finish of how this process works. And I will guarantee you that Jake did not walk into that meeting that day with this idea, right? Like, this is what we're gonna do. This came out of all the data and the conversations that they had together as a group. So let me just really quickly share this, and it's very, very short. Hang on, full screen. Okay, can you see it? If I push play.
At Copper Point, we believe that we don't just exist in Albuquerque, but we exist for the city of Albuquerque. Part of our vision is to serve our city, and we believe that God has strategically placed us to make a difference in the public high school that is positioned in our backyard. At the end of 2017, we met with leaders from the school and identified that there was a need for a space for students to go before and after school to study. A place where volunteers and teachers alike can help the students. And as a church, that was a project we wanted to get behind. In February of this year, we began to work on the hub at Highland High School. Week after week, dozens of volunteers from Copper Point showed up to help convert the old wood shop into a safe space on the campus where students can go before and after school. A place where they can grow together, a place where they can receive tutoring, a place where they can be mentored by teachers and leaders who believe in their potential. See, we believe in the students. We believe in the teachers and staff of Highland High School. And we are excited to see how the hub contributes to the school's overall success.
So it is very short. I just want to say, I believe in you. You can do this. And you will do this. Sorry, the video makes me cry, dang it, every time. You can do this and you will do this. This is how the process works. And it's because we care about kids. And that's what I love about that video. Sorry. Seriously, every time.